Just another quick note on versioning. Uh, as I mentioned, this is a temporary designation. Preferred releases evolve over time, and that's why we've published the previously preferred releases. And at any given time, we are monitoring future preferred releases. So that is an insight we actually give to our internal team. So if you're working with any of our SEs or support personnel, they have that information available and can share that with you with some level of transparency as to what is going to be the next preferred release. But until it's vetted and meets our criteria, for obvious reasons, we don't publish that. So that's a little bit of the nuance behind that. The other thing I want to mention, and it'll kind of come up here in the next set of slides where I talk about examples, is that as best as possible, we are also trying to evaluate having minimum versions that are guidance. And what I mean by that is that because there are so many releases, we realize it's daunting. And so ultimately, because our releases are cumulative and we're continuing to fix known issues, we are trying our best to actually get to what we refer to as our tip of throttle. What I mean by that actually is probably better explained through an example. So you know what, let me pause that a second here and let me go through some examples that will make that a bit clearer. This was the security advisories page. I showed that as well. But let's touch a little bit about delivering fixes, because I think that will bring up some of the other things that I was attempting to touch on. So our goal, just to be clear, is to always deliver impactful solutions to provide you stability. One of the things I hear most from our customers is that they love our features, they love the innovation, but what they really value is stability. And I'm sure that resonates true for a lot of our audience here as well. And so we hear that and we get that. And that is why when we know of a particular issue, the way that we approach it from a software development lifecycle standpoint is those fixes are first tested and developed in our main branches. Typically, our main branch is going to be a branch that is yet to hit the wire. It's going to be the next major PanOS version. In this case, 12.1, as I alluded to earlier. Well, beyond that, obviously, the majority of our customers are not on a future version because it has not been released. So we target backports of those fixes. So once a fix is stable in the main branch, what we do is we take a look at our upcoming releases and where our customers are, and effectively provide and backport those fixes into those said releases. And those could be across all of our supported code branches. So this ensures the critical improvements that we know about that are gotchas are effectively solved for before you run into them. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but it provides a bit more clarity, is we're providing proactively hot fixes for urgent issues. And so typically those are just the critical issues, the emerging or widespread issues that we see that might hit you. And we're going to provide those through the hot fixes. And so effectively, this is a proactive approach to meet you where you are, as I mentioned earlier. And by illustration, this is where, for example, if you're on 10.1, we're going to provide a hotfix for 10.114HX, right? And so if there's specific issues that we run across that we're like, okay, that needs a fix in 12.1, but also needs now a fix in 10.1 and 10.2 and 11.1 before customers run across it, then we're going to provide an incremental hotfix for that. And that's why you see this proliferation or sprawl around hot fixes. The thing I want to impress upon the team here is that there's a difference between a hotfix versus, say, a minor or major release. A hotfix is specific targeted issues, and it's typically a handful of issues, versus a minor maintenance release or major maintenance release are going to be a large volume of fixes. Sometimes, but not always. And it's more the exception than the rule that there are some features that creep in there. And that can be because of some needs around, say, ADEM or SSE or something along those lines. So that is typically the exception, not the rule. I just want to make that very clear. But there are some needs around that and some housekeeping that has to at times be done because not every feature can make it into a main version. But effectively, that's the way to structure major, minor, and hot fixes. The point being that hot fixes are very proactive, surgical fixes at the tip of these code branches to provide you the known issue to be addressed. Now, that delves into a little bit of examples that are probably needed around how we go through these bug fixes. So let's go through this. As I mentioned earlier, we have these main maintenance releases. 10.2, 11.1, 11.2 are going to have this .z digit, which will have the maintenance release. So for our standard maintenance releases, like you see here, they're going to effectively be like building blocks. So when you have, in this case, later versions, they include all the fixes from the previous versions. 10.2.10 in this example includes the changes from 10.2.9, 10.2.8, and the aforementioned. And so you can be certain, as this example illustrates, that if a bug was fixed in 10.2, it's going to be provided in a future version. And that is the building blocks that we incorporate. So that is hopefully demystifying maybe some questions that come up. Let's take an example now with the hot fixes, in case I didn't explain that well enough earlier. So hot fixes are a little bit different, and the reason for it is it's a timing element. So they're targeted fixes, as I mentioned earlier, that are released independently, but they may not include automatically all the fixes from some sort of later maintenance release. Why is that? Well, let's just say that, by example, 10.2.10 was released, today. And then we come up with a specific hotfix for 10.2.9 hotfix number 15, let's say. If that release comes out tomorrow, it's obviously point in time is after 10.2.10 was released. So it's not going to include all the fixes that were already been built into 10.2.10. And that's just based on, the timing element of it. Why I mention that is because A, that's confusing to some folks, but also B, that requires a little bit of investigation to the known issue at hand, and requires you as a customer to take a look at what is addressed and what is still outstanding or known. So hopefully that provides some clarity around what that looks like. I know sometimes a picture might be helpful here around the code branches. But the thing that I want to come back to that I was mentioning earlier is that as best as possible, we are looking to normalize and really invest in the tip of the throttle as much as possible. So in this particular example here, 10.2.9 hotfix 15, 16, 17. These are the tip of the throttle. They're cumulative, as I mentioned earlier. But as we provide stability there, we want to only invest in, say, 10.2.9 and maybe it's 10.2.8, right? And the other ones are no longer being invested into, so that you have only a few choices to even consider. Ones that include all the cumulative fixes, so you can be assured of that. And at any given time, those could be candidates for, say, a preferred release, because they include all the fixes that we know about, and they're providing a level of stability that you can count on. So that is the intent that we are going through. Of course, I'd be remiss in not mentioning that end of life factors into this as well. So as we are going through the journey, and as you may know, 10.1 is coming up for end of life, 10.2 sometime next year, as documented on our pages. We take a look at that in terms of, the investment that's being made. Obviously, we know customers are there, so we continue to invest there and provide those critical fixes. But at some point, this leads to a conversation around upgrades, and that's our next topic that we'll touch on. So why upgrade? And it depends, once again, where you are on the journey. If you're on 10.1, perhaps you're considering 10.2. I have a next slide here that talks about 11.2. And I'm just doing some broad strokes around this team. But the thing that I want to mention is that there are a variety of reasons why you would want to upgrade. The obvious are because you want to be on a supported release. You don't want to run outdated software where we're not making investments to product security issues, to bug fixing. So that is obviously a compliance need. But beyond that, there's feature capabilities. And certainly you can read more about this. We've documented it, be it 10.2 or 11.1. There are a lot of future-proof features that are available there in PanOS. And so be it ADEM to Quantum to TLS 1.3 and decryption technologies, these innovations and the way that the world is evolving, you want to make sure that you are availing of these features. That is hopefully why you are using the platform, on our platform, and continuing on the journey. And so this is what we ask you to consider. There's obviously features here that I'm highlighting on the specific releases, but ultimately the fundamentals hold true, which is that by upgrading, you're maximizing the value and the investment that you're making into our platform. You're ensuring that as we continue on the journey, that we provide the fixes that you would expect us to provide for any critical P1, P2 issues, product security issues. And then, of course, we want you to use our features that we're investing into to make sure you have the best security possible, the best efficacy possible, and to ensure that any advanced attacks and emerging threats are mitigated. So that's a bit of the obvious, but it's, I think, worth touching on, because I know that depending on where you are on the journey, what version you are using, there's a comfort factor in being on a stable version and not fixing what's broken or not having to upgrade. Also, very mindful of the fact that maintenance cycles are non-trivial for a lot of you. Talking with manufacturing to healthcare to retail, there are certain cycles, education, SLED. There's only certain times of the year where you can go through maintenance and downtime. And there are certain periods where maybe it doesn't make sense based on your stakeholders and your community. And I'm certainly aware of the fact that when there are product security issues, that there's challenges that you also face having to upgrade when those things exist as a force upgrade, the downtime that results from that, the downtime to your stakeholders and to your leaders that you have to be accountable for. So very mindful of that and the fact that that is not a trivial journey at times. This is why, as I mentioned earlier, we're making a lot of investment into this in future PanOS versions. By the way, also evaluating that for backporting in existing versions where these tools are made available to you to help upgrade, to help you upgrade and effectively facilitate that journey. All right, so as we wind down here, a few things I want to mention. I'm sure there's a ton of questions, and hopefully you're being able to handle those as well. I want to take a look at those in a second here. But
just so you know, Jeff's been doing an amazing job answering the questions in chat. I got to give him props for that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate that. Charles, actually, I just want to pause here. Are there some burning things that we should address before we go into some successive slides? Or
at the moment, it looks like Jeff's been keeping on top of everything. I don't think there is at the moment.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you for the questions, community. I know this is not an easy topic, and it's evolved a lot over time. So I'm hopeful that we're addressing these issues. We're hearing you, and that you find this as a good use of time. So I'll wind down here in a few minutes. I don't have much more content, but I just want to touch on some key guidelines that we look at from an upgrade standpoint. So first and foremost, as I touched on earlier, what is the need for upgrading? That is a very personal decision and one that you have to evaluate for yourself. Is it based on new features that you want to avail of? Well, then that would necessitate a move to 10.2 or 11.1, where those features are now introduced and will protect you or allow your teams to be more successful. So that's a decision that you have to make. Obviously, end of life is something that we all want you to be mindful of for the obvious reasons of being on something that is supported, to the fact that we don't want to make it a fire drill as we get closer to the end of life date, where, depending on the number of firewalls that you have and your upgrade journey, that becomes a challenge. That is always stressful, and that's not one that we want to necessarily have you go through. Certainly, we're there to help you on that journey, and I hope that our field folks that you've interacted with, have been able to help you on that journey. But nonetheless, we don't want to make that a last moment effort. So that's something to assess. And then, as I touched on earlier, there could be specific bug fixes that necessitate that upgrade cycle, or product security issues, a critical or high CVE that is top of mind for you and your organization that requires an upgrade. So how do you evaluate this? Well, we're always encouraging evaluating your environment. Taking a look at your existing setup, what that looks like, Do you have a uniform PanOS release model? Do you have a hybrid model across your hardware fleet? What do the end-of-life dates look like? And where do you need to make changes? Is it the entire fleet? Is it a subset of the fleet? Is it, a remote location? Is it the main branches? Those are obviously decisions that you make, are well versed in. And then, overall, what does that look like for your organization in terms of comfort level? So that gets into a lot of nuances, for example, high availability to lab environments, to how you can test this and future proof it. Maybe there's less traffic environments where you feel more comfortable in taking on the new releases and the changes that come from that, testing it for some period of time before you actually roll that out across the organization. Once again, these are all personal decisions, but these are some of the guidelines that I see our support teams and field teams use. So we felt that having a conversation about releases and terminology and preferred releases naturally delves into this upgrade guidance conversation. So I've mentioned this already, but obviously you want to review our release notes and see the dependencies that may be there, and then ultimately come up with a plan, whether that may be a method or procedure to, what happens when things go wrong, to a lab environment where you can safely test this, to obviously, having resiliency and HA in place. Those are all decisions that you and your organization can make. I'm certain many of you have some well rolled out methodologies for this. You don't need me to tell you this, but these are just some of the high level guidelines that we put out there. I think this probably deserves a topic on its own. So I'm interested to see if many of you out there feel that that's something that's needed. But, by way of all this, I want to mention that we do have a lot of tools that are out there and resources. So once again, as Charles mentioned, we'll make this deck available to you with the hyperlinks, or I'm happy to actually put those hyperlinks in chat if you want them now. But you can do an easy search and find the upgrade guides for 11.1, for 10.2 respectively, to all of the upgrade paths and video series that we have available. You can see some screenshots here. There's one that I will bring up because I think it was very well done. Our team, so this is Jeff and his counterparts, actually invested a lot of time, most recently in upgrade seminars. I had the privilege of being part of many of those that we did back at the end of last calendar year, across the board, across different time zones, to talk about the upgrade journey. And then since then, they've actually recorded a bunch of demos. So for example, if you're moving from 10.0 to 10.2 or 11.0 to 11.1, there's specific guidance there. In fact, let me just go over to that page. It is, this page right here in LIVEcommunity. Hopefully you can see it. And it's a pretty lengthy video, I think over an hour, last I checked, but it goes into these topics of compatibility, preservation of settings, minimizing downtime, through actual tangible examples. So this is something that our community and yourselves as customers had asked for. We got a lot of feedback saying, great, you have some generic videos, but they don't really mimic my environment, or they're not complex in nature based on my deployments. And can you provide that? So the team took that to heart and put that together. As you can see, this was released just in February. And so it's very recent that this is out there. Hopefully that provides some clarity and some guidance that all of you can take a look at and use. So with that, I think we are on to our Q&A portion of the conversation. Happy to take any questions that may be outstanding, or Jeff and Charles, you can bring to light any outstanding questions that we haven't addressed yet, or perhaps even just some themes that are emerging from the conversation.
Yeah, no, the questions and the conversations in the chat have been absolutely fantastic. I'll grab one of the last ones that just popped in because I'm sure Jeff's probably working his way down. Daniel is asking, from 10.1x, we can upgrade on a single hop up to 3 major PanOS main versions, correct? Or can you go from 10.1 to 11.2 in a single step?
10.1 to 11.2 can be availed of in a single step. There was previous guidance around getting to a base release, but in the more recent versions, and Jeff can keep me honest here if I'm incorrect or getting the nuances wrong, but yes, you can jump from that example to 11.2.
Fantastic. Let's see here. Ben's asking, last time he was at Ignite, Nir mentioned the accelerated use of machine learning to assist PAN in everyday business. and sorry, it's scrolling on me. Is Pan using machine learning and AI to vet bugs and publish new versions of code and or hotfixes? It seems to me the schedule of updates is very accelerated now. This used to be much more controlled for me, and I've been running Pan for 10 years and started on version 5.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, excellent question. And as I had assumed, there's some longtime veterans here who've been on the journey for quite some time. So you're correct, sir. I think that was Ben. Yeah, that you've seen a lot of acceleration of the hot fixes. In fact, their hot fixes, I think the cadence is probably every couple of weeks, to be honest, if you take a look at that. So to answer your question, yes, Nir was correct. I've had the pleasure of meeting Nir as well in our offices here and abroad. And he's certainly privy to a lot of that information. There's a lot of machine learning that we are leveraging. And so this begs going into a lot of different details. But from a broad stroke standpoint, one of the things that we have leveraged a lot more is automations, as you can imagine. So as part of our quality assurance cycles, we have, let me just say, a lot of regression testing in place, a lot of what our SVP describes as zero trust for PanOS, when we look at all the changes that have to be checked in across our code branches and the proliferation of PanOS, which has become, obviously, Ben, you know this better than me, has become so much more complex over the years. So long-winded way of saying that we leverage machine learning and automations to go through all of our test cases. Let me give you a specific example. In full transparency, we run over 100,000 test cases now. And so to go through 100,000 test cases is not a trivial task. If you ask me, Rohit, how long does that take you? I would say to you, last year, probably weeks of time to go through all those 100,000 test cases, which can not only delay our releases, but also result in perhaps some regressions or customer found defects if you haven't gone through all those test cases. So we've leveraged technology, as you can imagine, to accelerate that, where all of those, let's just say 100,000 test cases can now take us a matter of days as opposed to weeks. That helps accelerate not only the vetting process to make sure that we're not seeing regressions, but also allow us to then put out releases with a higher frequency, which is why you're seeing those hot fixes. So yes, I hear you. We're definitely leveraging a lot of technology there. Branching to that, I get a lot of questions around documentation to co-pilots, the things that we're investing into. For obvious reasons, a lot of machine learning is leveraged there to make sure that the delta between us discovering an issue and documenting it is less, so we can give that level of transparency to you, so that when we release a hot fix or release a hot fix, that we can document it right away. So there's a lot of usage of technology there to help us with that. I hope that addresses the question that you had, Ben.
Fantastic. Yeah. Kirk's got a question that I'm going to kind of add on to it, as a matter of fact. One piece of functionality that I would love to see is a scheduled restart. Exists on all my other major network, vendor network equipment. And I'm going to throw the addition on that as, instead of just a scheduled restart, what about a no restart update?
Yes, sir. So I did not address this earlier, but I will share that we are evaluating currently in our next major PanOS version, patching. And patching specifically for, let's just say, critical CVEs, so that you do not have to have downtime for your firewalls. So yes, we realize that that is top of mind for a lot of folks, and that things could be much better without that downtime for obvious reasons. And so that is an investment that we are making and evaluating. That will evolve over time. Obviously, I say this from a product perspective, just to be a realist. The proof is always in the pudding. You need to have a good experience in using that. But as that evolves over time, we do also are looking and evaluating making that automated, just like you would, and I'll use the app ID or threat prevention example, content updates. Content updates, many of you avail of that automatically. You download those and you avail of new app IDs or new threat signatures on a monthly basis, or even more frequently than that. You trust us with that, and that is just automated. Why not with patching? So that is the North Star and what we're looking to get to, and ultimately so that you don't have to have these maintenance cycles and downtimes for your technology.
Cool. Let's see here. A lot of the questions just on it faster than I can ask them. So great job there. One thing I will just go ahead and mention is I did go ahead and share a link in Live Community. The link in Live Community is pointing right now to our registration page for today's event. Go ahead and bookmark that link if you want to go ahead and continue this conversation after the event's over. I will have a new page up in the next day or two, a new blog post with the link for the actual video, with the presentation. I'm also, because it's been so fantastic, the chat history, I'm going to include that in our actual post as well. So anyone who wants to look through the chat and actually see the answers to questions, you'll be able to download it's probably an Excel spreadsheet or whatnot, pretty simple. But you'll have available access to that and availability to read that as well. But give me a couple of days to get the actual video downloaded, edited, cropped, and all that fun jazz, and then that'll be available for everyone to go ahead and rewatch this. The conversations and whatnot have been absolutely fantastic. So we really want to say, I just want to say right now, thank you to everyone who is attending right now. You all been doing a fantastic job with this. Keep the questions coming. We don't have to hang up for a few more minutes here. So if you do have more questions, let us know. We did just have a question come in from Louis here. I think I may have missed something, but is there a way to obtain customized view notification for PanOS releases that would be filtered specific for my hardware platform and code base that I'm running on them combined?
So let me think. You can certainly subscribe in the cloud as a customer support portal. As many of you probably do, you can subscribe to our updates where when we release a PanOS version, you get that in your inbox. But I believe the question is a bit more nuanced, specific to your hardware version. And I do not know of that, unless, Jeff, you know of something there. But it's a good question, which is, how do I get the things that I care most about effectively? And I'm generalizing that. But I will tell you, once again, in full transparency, because my team does evaluate and look at the end of life page. We are making an investment in having a JSON for the end of life page, for example, or the ability to actually subscribe to it just like you can for other pages, like the advisory page is a good example. Many of you probably get the product security advisories into your inbox when they're released, and because you can subscribe to it, why not on the end of life page? This seems to go level deeper, where you can maybe subscribe to it, but say, I only care about the 440s and 5440s, and tell me about the corresponding PanOS versions aligned to that. That's at least the way that I'm interpreting that question. I apologize if I got that wrong, but that makes sense. And I'm happy to look into that. I think that's a solid bit of feedback there. And ultimately, as a product guy, I am always thinking about how we can make this better in the product itself, so you can have that personalized experience. I'm a huge fan of that in products that I have built that can tell you exactly what matters to you specifically. So keep that feedback coming, but I appreciate that. And that is something certainly that we can look at.
Yeah, Louis confirmed that is exactly his concern. So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Yeah, right now you have to unfortunately triangulate all of those things. But as I mentioned earlier, we get that. And I appreciate that feedback, because we can always do things better there and make that a bit more personal for you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a bunch of links coming in from Louis here for everyone to be able to get at after the event. Again, you'll have the presentation, you'll have the chat history. So you've obviously got the links as well now. Thank you very much, everyone. It looks like we're kind of slowing down on questions here. I don't think there's anything that I've missed. If there is, I do apologize.
Charles, one thing I was going to say, or I can offer here,
Sure.
which is the fact that you have this excellent chat history. Once again, being a fan of proactiveness, I can work with Jeff offline here, but this might merit an FAQ that we actually publish and perhaps even make available from the preferred release guidance page. It's something that we've touched on. We have some internal versions of it, I'll admit, for our support teams, but I see no reason why we shouldn't publish something like that, be it a KB or whatnot. So once again, the audience here, thank you for that.
Yeah.
We want to scale that to more than just the 100 or so folks that joined us here. Obviously, we have a ton of customers out there around the world, and this time slot doesn't cater to everyone. So that might be something we can do, and maybe we can tag that as a fuel inspired thing, Charles. We can talk about that. I'm also open, just to put it out there, if you think that this sort of session would be valuable across different time zones, be it Asia Pacific and European, maybe we do another session like this. And so that's something we can also consider, if that makes sense.
No, actually, that makes perfect sense. As a matter of fact, that's actually what we're going to be doing with our first of the fuel workshop events that we have coming up next week. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about certifications. Okay. And for the first time ever, we're actually going to have 2 sessions on the same topic. One that's going to be North America friendly on the timing, and one that's going to be APAC friendly on the timing.
Okay.
So we're really looking forward to that. And I'd love to do that with more of these types of events. So yeah, we will definitely see about doing that. Possibly even think about having you again in 6 months to a year, do another one of these, because something's going to change in that year time frame, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With that, then I'll go ahead and wrap up. I'm not seeing any more questions added. Rohit, thank you very much again for everything. And Jeff as well. Really appreciate everything you guys have done, all the questions getting answered. Again, the live community post-event blog will be up in a couple of days. If people want to jump on there, continue asking questions, continue having these discussions, that's exactly why we're offering these types of things. So you can go ahead and keep talking, keep building the conversations, keep building up the information. We'll start building the fact that looks like we're going to build now too, which could put that wherever, live community, wherever we want to put that. So thank you very much. I will go ahead and let you go, and you can have a great day.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.